Wind battered the towering evergreens, sending needles and leaves swirling through the clearing in Yosemite National Park. A crisp dawn glow touched the rugged mountains, painting the granite peaks with a gentle, rose-colored light. For Aaron Ramsey, that morning, in early spring, promised nothing more than a bracing hike and the hope of forgetting the troubles plaguing his life. If only he had known what awaited him among the shadows of the forest, that his life was about to be irrevocably changed, and that the bond he forged beneath those ancient pines would unleash a miracle months later, one he could never have imagined. Aaron wasn't a tourist, nor was he a ranger. He was simply a man who had found himself at a crossroads. He had come to Yosemite in search of renewal. His father had always told him, "Nature heals in ways the modern world can't understand," a phrase that had stuck in Aaron's mind for as long as he could remember. His father, gone now for nearly 5 years, had instilled a deep reverence for wild spaces in his only son. Worn down by a recent divorce and the guilt that he hadn't been able to mend the wounds in his marriage, Aaron was left uncertain of who he was and where he belonged. All he knew was that he needed to strip away the noise of daily life and return to the wilderness, that ancient cradle of solace and clarity. Back then, Aaron didn't live far. He was staying in a small cabin in Wawona, just south of Yosemite Valley, an Airbnb he rented as a personal sanctuary. Every morning, he would trek along lesser-known trails, scanning thick swathes of forest where the presence of other people felt like a distant memory. He would walk until his mind settled into a peaceful quiet, the hurt and questions about his failed marriage melting into the hush of the wild. That morning, he set off before sunrise with a small pack containing water, dried fruit, a journal, and a coat. Stubborn clouds raced across the skies, and the wind carried the sweet, almost sharp scent of pine and damp earth. He chose a path near Glacier Point Road, one that twisted away from the main overlooks. Trudging along, he let the mesmerizing glow of the morning sun guide him, and the labyrinth of trees swallowed him up. He noticed the silence first, the stillness that made the hair on the back of his neck rise. The squirrels that usually darted through branches were quiet. Even the jays seemed subdued. It was a hush, akin to the moments before a storm, that weighted tension in the air. Curious, Aaron pressed on, but after a few more steps, he heard it, a guttural whimper, a sound that reverberated with heartbreak. He froze, scanning the trees. Between tall trunks, about 50 yards away, a bear was lying on the ground, an adolescent black bear, by the look of it. At first, Aaron thought it was simply resting or ill, but as he approached cautiously, dread crept into him. A steel trap had clamped onto the bear's hind leg. The jaw of the trap looked fierce, rusted with age, but still strong enough to keep the animal pinned. Underneath the bear lay pine needles matted with its blood. Over and over, the bear let out labored moans, each more plaintive than the last, as though calling for help into the vast emptiness. Aaron's heart galloped in his chest. He had never been so close to a wild bear, let alone one in distress. Panic hissed at the edges of his mind. He'd heard harrowing stories of cornered bears, attacking those who tried to help. But looking into the creature's eyes, he saw an unmistakable mixture of fear and pain. It was a living, breathing being, suffering in a callous relic of human cruelty. Aaron's father's words echoed once more. Nature heals in ways the modern world can't understand. He didn't dare leave the poor animal to suffer. If he simply hiked back and informed a ranger station, it might be too late. Loss of blood or an infection could end the bear's life. He slung off his backpack and inched closer. The bear let out a guttural sound and struggled to free itself, but the trap wouldn't let go. With each thrash, more blood dampened the forest floor. Aaron knew he had to act quickly. "Mr. Bear," he whispered, voice trembling. "I'm not going to hurt you. I'm going to try to help." The bear paused, eyes fixed on him, as though understanding. Aaron carefully took off his jacket and edged close. He used the jacket to shield his hands. The trap looked old, perhaps illegally placed. He knelt, struggling to recall every tidbit of survival knowledge he had learned from nature shows and his father's lessons. Freed from the illusions of civilized life, he felt, for the first time in years, that he was doing something that profoundly mattered. The lock mechanism was half rusted. Leaning all his weight into it, Aaron pressed down, hoping to loosen the clamp. Nothing gave. The metal was sturdy. The clamp's teeth dug deep into the bear's fur. Each pull triggered a squeal of pain from the animal. Knowing the risk of retaliation, Aaron talked softly to keep the bear calm, repeating half-nonsensical things. Easy, easy, bud. You're doing great. Just a little more. Time felt elastic as sweat collected on Aaron's brow. Finally, he forced the lever open enough to slip the bear's leg free. In that moment, adrenaline overshadowed fear. The bear let out a muffled roar and tried to scramble backward, blood oozing from the wound. Aaron winced, seeing how gruesome it was. A row of punctures along the shin. He needed to stop the bleeding. Trembling from adrenaline, he slid out his first aid kit, rummaging for bandages and antiseptic. The bear's eyes grew wide, its muzzle snorting with anxiety. Yet something miraculous happened. Despite its obvious pain, the animal stayed close, as though it had gleaned that this human wasn't a threat. Carefully, Aaron cleaned the wound with a swab of disinfectant, ignoring the prickling terror that the bear might strike out. He wrapped gauze around its leg until the bleeding lessened. The entire time, the bear's eyes never left his face. It almost looked like gratitude glowing behind that dark gaze. Then, as if a silent pact had been made, Aaron moved back a few steps, heart still thundering. The bear limped on its injured leg, testing its weight. A soft whimper left its jaws. It looked at Aaron one last time, then slinked away into the forest, leaving a broken trap and blood-stained pine needles behind. For a few minutes, Aaron just stood there, the wind slicing through the trees, his lungs heaving. Relief and fear commingled as he realized what he had done. He checked himself over no bites, no scratches. All was well, though his own legs felt unsteady. He folded up the broken trap, deciding he would bring it to the park rangers and report it. That's when he noticed the nameplate on the clamp's hinge, Moorhead Ironworks. It was an old brand from decades past, a real manufacturer. Exactly how an ancient contraption ended up here remained a mystery. But Aaron was determined that no other animal would be maimed by it again. By the time he got to the ranger station, the wind had died down, and the sun hovered in an azure sky. He recounted the incident to Ranger Linda Morales, who stared in horror at the tarnished trap. She promised an investigation, especially since such devices were illegal in national parks. Aaron didn't mention the detail that he had personally tended to the bear's wounds. He was afraid the rangers might reprimand him for meddling or question his story. For weeks afterward, he revisited the area, scanning for paw prints or any sign that the bear had survived. He left small offerings of food, though he was wary of drawing in other curious wildlife. Still, the forest offered no further traces of the injured adolescent. Gradually, Aaron's life began to shift. Something about that rescue had stirred him. He found his nightmares about the divorce easing, replaced by vivid dreams of a black bear padding through a starlit forest. He awoke each morning, feeling more certain that if he could save a suffering creature, perhaps he was not the failure he had believed himself to be. It was a subtle change, a sense of renewed self-worth blossoming inside him. He wrote pages upon pages in his journal about the incident. Words poured out of him about connection, about the invisible lines that link humans and animals, about how sometimes healing one wound can begin to heal another. In saving the bear, Aaron had begun to save himself. Yet, in all his journaling and introspection, he never expected to see the bear again. He'd heard enough accounts from rangers and wildlife experts to know that wild animals rarely return to the site of their trauma. They move on, forging new paths of survival. That's what Aaron believed had happened, and he was content with that knowledge. The bear's life went on, and so did his. In June, Aaron received a phone call that changed everything. His mother had fallen ill in Santa Barbara, and he rushed back to be by her side. For months, he focused on caring for her, helping her recover from a serious lung infection. He found a local job, working as a landscaper, which paid enough to cover the bills. Yosemite faded into memory, a luminous interlude of personal discovery, overshadowed by the demands of the everyday. Then, come late summer, his mother's health improved. She encouraged him to return to Yosemite, to pick up where he left off. "Don't waste your life, Aaron. You found peace up there. Go find it again," she told him. And so, with her blessing, he packed his truck and drove north, back into the embraces of granite cliffs and rolling forests of ancient trees. He arranged another short-term rental near El Portal Road, in a modest cabin within an hour's drive of many trailheads. From his window each morning, he could see the swirling mist above the Merced River. That alone comforted him. Some deep, unspoken part of him hoped for a sign from the black bear, yet logic whispered that the creature had moved on long ago. 3 days after his return, while hiking, he noticed something odd. A single footprint in the mud near the same clearing where he had found the snare. The tracks were faint, but it was definitely that of a bear's paw, a hind print, it seemed, possibly from a bear that favored one leg. Could it be the same adolescent? His heart pounded at the possibility, and a tremor of anticipation moved through him. He decided to come back at dawn the next day, to see if he could gather more clues. He arrived before sunrise. Crisp mountain air swept across his cheeks as he made his way to the clearing. The morning light trickled through the trees, illuminating a patch of grass. He scanned the ground and found fresh tracks, leading deeper into the forest. Slowly, he followed them step by step until he saw movement ahead. There, partially hidden by the trunk of a colossal pine, was a black bear, its fur glistening with faint dew. The bear turned its head. One hind leg had a patch of missing fur, likely where it had been trapped. A scar ran across its flesh, pink and uneven. It was indeed the same bear, older now, bigger, though still smaller than a full-grown adult. Aaron's heart swelled at the sight. The wound, while scarring, had healed. What took his breath away most was that the bear did not run. It watched him with calm eyes, recognized him, or so Aaron felt in his bones. He inched closer, remembering that day months before, the frantic effort to free the clamp, the bear's blood staining the pine needles. A lump filled his throat. He was sure the bear would bolt any second, but it didn't. Instead, it let out a low, rumbling grunt. Not threatening, more like a greeting. Aaron felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. That surreal encounter lasted only a minute. Then the bear rose, limped forward just a bit, and vanished behind the thick brush. That night, Aaron hardly slept, replaying the scene over and over. It felt like a second gift, an affirmation that, indeed, their paths had crossed for a reason. He realized that he longed to see the bear again, not out of vanity, but out of a desire to confirm that compassion matters, that it can shift destinies in ways unseen. Over the next few weeks, whenever Aaron had time, he ventured into the forest at dawn. Sometimes the bear showed up. Other times, it didn't. But each meeting seemed almost choreographed, as if guided by an invisible hand. He was careful not to feed it or approach too closely. He knew the cardinal rule of wildlife interaction. Do not habituate a wild animal to human food or presence. And yet, he couldn't resist leaving a small canteen of fresh water or clearing away sharp debris from the trail. Each dawn, they would study each other under the silent crowns of pines and unspoken dialogue between two survivors carrying scars of the past. On one crisp morning, near a bend in the trail, the bear limped closer than ever before. Aaron could see the details of its scar, the texture of its fur, and the quiet intelligence in its gaze. He felt an odd resonance, like a chord struck between them. The memory of his father flitted through his thoughts, and he inwardly thanked him for every lesson about respect for the wilderness. It was after that encounter that Aaron felt a stirring, the desire to do more than just exist in these woods. He wanted to contribute to the preservation of these majestic creatures. The weeks in Yosemite had rekindled his spirit, had reminded him that life wasn't about dwelling on failures, but about forging new beginnings. Motivated, Aaron contacted a local wildlife nonprofit, Sierra Wildlife Rescue, and began volunteering. He helped track population data, joined cleanups to remove litter, and participated in educational seminars about the importance of respecting wildlife boundaries. The divorce no longer consumed him day and night. In healing an animal, he had found the impetus to heal his own wounds, and the next step was dedicating himself to a cause that transcended his personal pain. As autumn colored the leaves in gold and crimson, Aaron immersed himself in wildlife advocacy. His volunteer work took him on hikes to remote sections of the park where rangers monitored various species. One hazy afternoon, after a day spent collecting data on stream restoration, he spotted something that catapulted his heart into his throat. The very same black bear, hobbling near a small grove. And this time, it wasn't alone. There, wobbling by her side, were two small cubs, their fur sleek and shiny, their curious snouts sniffing the autumn air. They couldn't have been more than a few months old. Aaron froze, stunned. So the bear was actually female and a mother now. A swirl of emotion overtook him. Had the harrowing injury not been healed, she might never have been able to bear cubs. He marveled at the providence of nature, how a single act of compassion could ripple outward in ways unimaginable. He stayed at a distance, mindful never to intrude on a mother bear and her cubs. But that wonder, that pure sense of awe, enveloped him. It felt like witnessing the unfurling of a miracle. The real miracle wasn't just that she had survived that was powerful enough. It was that, in the face of near-fatal trauma, she had persevered to create new life, bridging her resilience to the next generation. Aaron watched as she guided the cubs through the undergrowth, occasionally sniffing their small heads, ushering them to keep up. One of the cubs lagged behind, coaxed forward by gentle nudges, a gentle snort, her voice telling them to stay close. After a few moments, she glanced in Aaron's direction, even from 100 yards away. He imagined he could see recognition in her eyes, as though saying, "Thank you for this chance. Thank you for helping me live to see them." He wiped away tears, a shuddering breath escaping him. Indeed, in saving her, he had played a small but vital part in the tapestry of life unfolding in Yosemite's wilderness. And now, she had a family. This was the miracle that soared beyond his limited imagination. In that instant, he thought about how often humans underestimate the power of a single act of kindness, how quickly they forget the enormous potential in every choice. One good deed can echo through time, affecting not only the immediate recipients, but countless lives yet to come. Aaron wanted to celebrate. He wanted to share the news with someone, but part of him also felt this truth was sacred. He decided to keep the details private, confiding only in Ranger Linda Morales, who had become something of a friend since the day he handed in that illegal trap. She listened, eyes shining with excitement. "That's beautiful," she murmured. "People who think humanity and nature are forever separate. They don't know what they're missing. We're all bound together, whether we admit it or not." In the weeks that followed, Aaron's volunteer work brought him deeper into the conservation world. Whenever he was asked why he was so passionate about wildlife, he recounted, in vague terms, that he once helped a wounded bear. Sometimes, he would share that the same bear had returned, thriving, with cubs in tow. Many folks responded with awe. Others insisted on hearing every detail. But Aaron kept the story's deepest parts close to his heart, how it changed him, how it felt like redemption for his own failings. Meanwhile, he noticed changes in himself. He no longer woke up paralyzed by regret. Instead, he started to dream of new possibilities, perhaps returning to school to study environmental science or fundraising to support wildlife rehabilitation programs. He considered writing a memoir about his life's journey, how the darkest times can sometimes lead to the brightest dawns. His ex-wife, Megan, called one afternoon, wanting to check in. In her voice, he sensed a distance, but also a cordial warmth that hadn't been there before. They spoke about the divorce, about the life they had tried to build, about how both had changed since it ended. There was no bitterness, no rehashing old arguments. When he mentioned his work in Yosemite, she told him she was proud of his efforts. The call ended on a note of mutual respect, and Aaron was grateful for it. Though they had grown apart, he realized that part of healing came from acknowledging the lessons in what once was. Through the swirl of personal changes and day-to-day responsibilities, the image of that mother bear and her cubs buoyed him. He occasionally spotted her in the distance, rummaging for berries, teaching the cubs to climb trees, or guiding them to the river to learn how to catch fish. Each glimpse felt like receiving a letter from a dear friend, proof that she and her offspring were thriving, that life went on, enriched by the resilience they shared. As snowfall dusted Yosemite's peaks, many visitors left for the season, leaving the park in a hush of white. The bears, too, prepared for winter hibernation. Aaron joined the rangers for a few more weeks, patrolling the trails, checking for any last signs of illegal hunting or trapping. He'd grown to admire the stoic grandeur of Yosemite's winter landscape, the quiet hush of snow-laden branches, the ghostly haze of breath in the freezing air. It reminded him that every cycle of nature includes a dormant season, necessary for renewal in the spring. One frigid morning, he walked to the clearing where he'd found the trapped bear so many months before. Snow enveloped the ground in a pristine blanket. The pines whispered in the sharp wind. He thought of the mother bear, now likely nestled in a den with her cubs, sleeping through winter. He imagined their soft breathing, their shared warmth, and the promise that they would emerge again under gentler weather. Standing there, he felt an overwhelming gratitude for the bear, for the cosmic alignment that had brought him to that clearing on that fateful day, and for the way life had given him the courage to take a risk and do what was right. He recalled the day he saw Moorhead Ironworks etched on the rusted metal trap, the name of a real manufacturer from decades past, still lingering in this wilderness, symbolized the clash of civilization's carelessness against nature's silent dignity. And yet, it was that same day, that same tragedy turned triumph, which sparked the rebirth of the bear's life, and, inadvertently, his own. Aaron closed his eyes and allowed the wind to fill his lungs. He would leave Yosemite at the month's end, returning to Santa Barbara to help his mother more permanently. But he promised himself he'd come back every year, maybe more often if he could. After all, this place was now part of his story. Yosemite had tested him, taught him that sometimes you have to fight to save what's wounded, even if it's terrifying, even if the outcome is uncertain, because in saving something else, you might also save a hidden part of yourself. Months later, well into the next spring, Aaron found himself standing at the entrance of Yosemite once more, carrying a camera this time. He'd had a dream about the mother bear and her cubs, so vivid that he awakened with tears on his cheeks. He felt a yearning to see them again, to confirm with his own eyes that the journey was still unfolding. Ranger Morales greeted him warmly, a hint of a smile on her weathered face. They talked about the winter storms, about the recent sightings of wildlife. Just 2 weeks ago, someone had reported seeing a mother black bear with 2 young cubs rummaging around a creek near the rim of the valley. He set off at dawn, following the ranger's directions. After hours of careful hiking, there they were, near a cluster of fallen logs by the water's edge. The mother bear was teaching her cubs to forage for food among the rocks, likely looking for insects and grubs. Aaron watched from a safe distance, the telephoto lens of his camera allowing him an intimate view without disturbing them. The cubs, now nearly a year old, tumbled over one another with playful energy, Their mother's scar was still visible, a permanent testament to her ordeal, but she moved with strength and confidence. Aaron's hand shook as he clicked the camera's shutter. In that stillness, he felt a wave of emotions, awe, reverence. Pride, though pride might be too simple a word to describe the sense of profound connection he experienced. He recalled how he had once been a broken man, wrestling with guilt and sorrow, unsure of his place in the world. Now, because of one decision to act from compassion, risking his own safety, to free a trapped bear, he stood on the other side of that darkness. He had rediscovered a purpose. He watched as the mother bear nuzzled one of her cubs closer, guiding it as it sniffed along a fallen trunk. She lifted her head, and for a moment, it seemed she looked directly at Aaron, her dark eyes calm, shining with that same unspoken gratitude he had witnessed before. The moment passed quickly, but the echo of it lived on in his heart. Eventually, the trio ambled away into the thick brush, leaving Aaron alone in the hush of the forest. He lowered his camera, chest tight with emotion. The forest breathed, the ancient pines swaying in the gentle breeze, the water rushing softly over stones. Everything was as it should be: wild, free, indomitable. And so, Aaron Ramsey lingered in that place, letting the wonder wash over him. He thought about the simple, profound truth that love, empathy, and a willingness to help can create ripples that reach far beyond our sight. That day, he realized the miracle hadn't just happened months before it was happening all the time. In the quiet ways life perseveres, in the healing that comes after pain, and in the hearts of those brave enough to say, "Yes, I will help. I will take the risk." And in doing so, I might just discover the best parts of who I am. He left Yosemite that evening with a soul teeming with gratitude, a camera filled with memories, and the steadfast belief that miracles do happen, especially when guided by compassion, resilience, and the deep connections that bind all living beings to one another.